Welcome, everyone. This is Pineleaf Needles, and you're listening to LOTRO Players News, where we take a look at the latest news in LOTRO and here on LOTRO Players. And this week we have with us Terry Adwin.
Hi.
And Cinders.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Let us head into the game news, which is
I'm not sure how to
more
mute it on
rumors
here,
than
guys.
anything else. Let's start with the beacon. And we have a boat on the beacon.
Yeah, I was trying to identify where this boat is exactly, because I'm not 100% sure that it's a Gondor boat. I think this might be in Rohan somewhere, because the banners are green.
Oh, because the banners are green?
And the docks are wood instead of stone, and most of those docks in Gondor are stone. But I don't actually know.
You might be doing a better job than I am, since I was assuming that it was somewhere on Long Lake. Let's see what's in the community spotlight. The Harnkinger Games 7 will take place from September 24th through the 30th on Laurelin. And there is a full schedule up on the links. And if you can't make the games, it will be streamed. And the streams will, of course, be posted to YouTube afterwards. And that
they did that last year, too. That was really cool.
Yep. And that'll start September 24th. That's a little bit more than a week from our recording. So a week from the day of posting, then.
Mm-hmm.
And if you missed the Gondorman Rock Night, you can watch the whole thing on a link provided there, thanks to Hollyberry. And Sizzling September Oaks with Purple Pipeweed Parlor Band.
What's today?
Yeah, it was today on Laurelin. Maybe they will have a show on that later on. We'll see if that ever gets posted. And Chickening Around with a new comic has a new comic up on chapter 14, Spider Foe.
This was such a great week for Chickening Around, because I read it and I immediately thought of Sans. And then I thought of it again today because my mom was describing how she had to go down into the basement. She took a broom with her to get the cobwebs. Yeah. Nope.
Well, yeah, I could understand. That sounded very... It rang familiar for some reason, yes.
Yes, which is why I saw it and immediately thought of Sans.
And Mushui has started streaming LOTRO on his Twitch channel. For the Ken Hall this week, the Last Great Alliance on Arkenstone is a family-friendly rank 10 kinship that has been active since 2007. So that's 11 years. Members come from all over the world and help each other out in both questing and gearing up. Their runs tend to be more fun than serious, with room to learn rather than being perfect from the start. They have their own Ken Island and crafting facilities and ingredients crates, and they also have their own Discord channel, joined by sending an in-game mail to Iraradith, Ragnaz, or Belethel. So that is the Last Great Alliance. And our weekly comment. Which instance or raid boss was the hardest you've ever encountered? All right, so which instance boss is the hardest you've ever encountered?
That stupid Nazgul or whatever it is that's the boss of the Silent Street with those spheres. I still don't think I finished that instance.
Let's say I'm going to go with in the Abyss of Mordath raid, the second boss.
Oh, the second boss there.
The one that fears you, and then your whole fellowship gets feared if you turn your back on him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pine Leaf didn't really experience much of that because he wasn't with us the week that we did it like 7 or 8 times.
Yeah. But to be fair, though, I think that's the only raid I've actually, gone on at level cap. The only thing that even came close was doing the, is it Helgerod, the giant wing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the only thing that even came close for me in my limited experience with the raids.
Have you ever done Dragon Wing on Helgerod?
I know I've done the spider wing. Is there a Drake wing?
Yeah, there is a Drake wing.
Because I've done the Drake wing, and I've done the giant wing for sure.
All right.
I don't remember if I did
Drake,
dragon.
Giant, and then the dragon wing is the last one. You have to do the other 3 to unlock it.
Yeah, I don't know if I actually did the dragon wing, but Ploy let me tag along when they did it one day. So I got to do 3 of 4 at least, for sure.
Yeah. The dragon wing is tricky simply because it helps a lot if you've got 24 people. And it's the only instance where it's because most people do Dragok with 12 instead of 24. But the Dragon Wing of Helgerod isn't the same way. It's not a light 24 like Dragok is.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to do Dragok yet, but I really want to sometime.
All right. Now I remember what my answer is. Which instance raid boss is the hardest I've ever encountered? And that goes to the Watcher in the Water.
Watcher's easy.
I'm sorry, I've never come close to surviving 5 minutes in that place.
We'll put a pin in that and come back to it. I've actually done Watcher a couple of times on level and been fine. It is easier if you're not on a melee character and you can just pew pew from a distance. But my burglar survived the Watcher, mostly by running around on the edges and spurring people on, because you can't really do a whole lot as a pure melee character in that raid.
Yeah, so I have a... Yeah, I really get... Well, to me, that's the hardest I've ever been to it. And it must be that someone's never explained it to me properly, because every time I try to do what I think they're saying, and every time the entire party just gets wiped to bits.
Did we do it with girls?
I think we've done it over-leveled with girls. We've never done it on-level with girls.
Let's say, because I think that's been my only experience with it in raid form.
Well, it's definitely easy to do it over-level.
Piece of cake over-level.
Then, in our fan site news, Andain collected trait points for his lore master, and Lotro, the Balviel edition, quested with her lore master. A lot of people are doing lore masters, apparently.
It's a trend.
Yeah. McVegan Pants quested in Mordor with Zeus. With Zeus?
Zeusadus.
Zeusadus.
Fellow streamer.
Okay. All right. I was sorry. For some reason, I was thinking Greek. Then, in the Riders of Arda, won the area door and watched the ride from Forehand to Dunland. Rider of Arda, the Eridor, rode from Forehand to Dunland. In other words, trying to go from the far north to the far south.
Yeah. I think.
Because I think that's the farthest you can go without ever going through any type of portal.
You can go through that portal, though, in Dunland.
Yeah, you could go through a portal in Dunland pretty easily, but I do wonder, well, why stop in Dunland?
Maybe
Why not?
level?
Well, I suppose that's a possibility. And Agent Brigman did some Farmer's Fair quests, and Gravity 42 completed some dailies in Dale. And there was a mini producer's letter from executive producer Sutherland about in-game loot, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Taylor's Shipwrecked Mariner is currently active, and you can watch the latest Court of the Rings, where Cordovan linked a little piece of information that they're thinking of the possibility of a new class.
Which is definitely more interesting than the whole endgame loot box post.
Yeah.
Although the whining on the forums about loot boxes is mildly entertaining to read.
Yeah, that has been a little bit of an entertainment thing, which I guess we'll go about when we talk about the article later on the matter.
Yeah.
But does anyone have any guesses on what kind of class that we can actually fit in that doesn't already exist?
I don't know, but I'm really hoping they finish balancing the classes we've got before they add something else.
Well, there is that. And
Otherwise, we end up with Bjornings all over again. Not actually Bjornings, but the lack of balance.
Yeah, there is that.
OP furballs, man.
And that's sort of like the question that they're hopefully they'll have things balanced out by the time they actually get this. Because right now they're not even up to the stage of giving so much as a hint as to what type of class it is. So still
Or
a chance.
which races would be able to use it.
Right. I have a feeling that they haven't completely decided that they're actually going to do it yet. And that Cordovan, I know at one point Cordovan was like, I wonder if I was supposed to say that. So, yeah, it's possible it might not have yet been to a stage where he was supposed to announce that they were thinking of it.
Well, I'm wondering if it'll come with another class revamp where maybe they narrow what each class specializes in order to create room for a new one if they decide to go that route.
Well, the problem is every time they try to get classes to specialize more, you get complaints from people that they can't do that. Because if a class can't have a reasonable chance of soloing, you're going to get a lot of complaints on that, because minstrels had that problem for a long time.
They're getting a lot of complaining from the community as it is.
Yeah.
They nerfed the minstrel.
Right, and
yeah, we've seen how nerfed that minstrel is, haven't we, finally?
Yes. Well, I thought most of the nerfing was to their healing anyway.
That's true. They nerfed mini healing.
Yeah, they did.
I could see why people would throw a fit about that.
Yeah.
Well, they nerfed minstrel healing, but Pine Leaf was still healing us for more, morale than we actually had, so...
Yeah.
Yes, and if I could do it, then someone who actually knows what they're doing could do it better. Let's go into the screenshot of the week, where Alice took this week's screenshot of an elf, and it looks like it's in Cliving. Or...
that looks like Snowborn to me.
Oh, Snowborn? See, shows you how much I recognize these places.
I could tell you it was in Rohan, but that would be as good as I'd get.
I guess it's trying to figure out, all right, who has the red banner?
Yeah, I don't know all of the banners off the top of my head, but the stone walls make me think Snowborn.
Very well. It's a screenshot of an elf in someplace in Rohan, a reasonably sized town there. And that concludes our beacon for this week. So what's on sale?
Nothing good.
Nothing good?
No, really nothing good. Although the weekly coupon gets you white die ×1 with coupon code white die now through September 20th. And 25% off of stuff that you really shouldn't bother wasting your LOTRO points on. Stat Tome selection boxes, regeneration food, run speed boost, and attack damage boost. Meh. Like I said, nothing good. Still waiting for character slots to be on sale. Hint, hint, hint. Have I done enough hinting yet?
I think I've heard that hint on a few occasions. Then let's head into our site news, where we're going to be talking about loot boxes, because that's what Squirrel talked about. In-game loot box, and update 23 and beyond. This was a mini producer's letter posted by Cyberblend, where pretty much they are making it so that there is no loot that's going to be unique in loot boxes. That any stuff from a loot box will be purchasable from vendors from whatever the currency for the in-game stuff and all that.
So my understanding on that after reading it was that applied specifically to gear, not necessarily to things like cosmetics.
Oh, no, it applies to cosmetics too.
Okay.
Yeah, it also
'Cause
applies
they
to
said
cosmetics.
further down that they didn't want to rule out the option of putting in some things into the loot boxes. But not something that would affect play, but something that would be unique or more difficult to attain.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what that was about, because cosmetics, at least of the item that looks like the gear or something like this, that is definitely falling under the vendors' things also. Except that there will be a different type of currency for cosmetics than for the actual gear.
And the whining. So much whining.
Oh, the whining.
Oh, the whining.
Now, the loot boxes, then there will no longer be quest rewards that give out keys for those loot boxes. That's going to be a store-only thing. That's where a lot of the whining is coming. You have two groups whining. One is that's only coming from the store, and the other one is that you have these people who have been stockpiling keys for update 23, and people are complaining, well, you should take those keys away from anyone who's been stockpiling them, is what the whining's been saying. And okay, they had already promised that they're not going to do that, and they're asking to Standing Stone to make the biggest breach of a promise they've ever done. And
don't forget everybody who's calling it pay to win by having things in loot boxes to begin with.
But everything in there is going to be first available in the instances. Running the instance is going to be the first thing you're going to be able to do it with. It won't be until the update after introduction where it'll be possible to get it outside of it dropping in the instance. Then they'll open up the vendors and the loot boxes will start to carry them.
So I reread what I read before, and I had it backwards. So they're not precluding the possibility of putting stuff in-game content that will not appear in loot boxes.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, especially raid and stuff, because they said the loot boxes will never contain the high-end raid gear. Because the best stuff is going to be from running the raids. The or it's either was I can't remember whether it was the raids or I should say the tier 3 stuff.
So, Cordovan's response said, "We are, however, leaving open the possibility that we might want to put rare or special loot in content, like rare raid or instance loot, that might not appear on Emotes or Ember's vendor." And I would imagine that would apply to the loot box as well.
Right.
Then came the round of whiners who were like, well, what if I don't raid and I want the best gear? Well, then you don't get it.
Well,
you don't need it.
What? Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry. And listen, I am probably the person in the game that raids the least. I've done exactly one. Well, okay, I guess I did 2 runs of it because of what we had happen on there. But I've completed once a raid at top level. When I say I'm not counting grades for that, I'm just counting the serious raid, and that was, of course, the Mordath, which I did a couple of months ago with Terry Adwin.
And me.
Yeah, and you, right.
I was there.
So, yes, I am as little, right. So, I am as little on a raid possibility on anything else. My chances of getting top end raid gear are almost 0. And I think, right, the raiders who go through all the trouble to do it, yes, of course they get the best loot.
Let's say somebody had a comment where they said that they liked the idea as long as you're not expected to have really, really good gear to be able to start the new content. So, making sure that the gear at the end of the current update is still going to be good enough to get you started until you can earn the new gear coming in the new update.
Oh, if you mean another,
and I was like, that comment does make sense rather than having a huge jump in gear expectations that you can't acquire any other way.
Oh, yeah. 105 to 106 was the most ridiculous jump ever.
Yeah. So, I thought that was a helpful comment.
Yeah, that is reasonable because, yes, you don't want to make the landscape impossible just because you hit a 106 mob. And that looks like they are addressing that issue for the next update, fortunately. Yeah. At least the first 2 builds of Borer indicate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue with the best gear coming from the raid. I have an issue with needing the raid gear to do landscape content, because...
Yeah.
No.
Nope.
As long as the gear that you're getting on landscape or for questing is going to get you through the content, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, it would be nice if a skirmish raid actually would drop the 120 skirmish raid would actually drop 120 gear instead of 105. Is it dropping 105 gear right now? Or yeah, it's dropping 105 gear right now. It would be nice if it would drop capped gear when you're running the capped raid, skirmish raid. Now, obviously, I'm not talking anything near the high quality that you would get from doing the serious raid. I'm just talking about something that's
appropriate for the level of character you're actually playing.
Yeah, something that could be nice for running a.
Yeah, the loot tables across the board kind of can use some work.
Yeah. But yes.
I would love to open a treasure cache and not get Jade Gemstones, like actually get something halfway decent out of it. How long has that been a running joke?
I don't know, but
since they put them in, I think.
Yes, because I do know that half the time you open it up, or is it? What is the percentage time which you actually do literally get a jade?
Never. Oh, I get jade gemstones. I think there's maybe once I've opened it and not gotten them, but again, I didn't actually get anything useful.
Right? Yeah.
Although, on the plus side, it's not dropping scholar mats like crazy, like the Gorgoroth crafting bundles every time you turn around. Where you're getting mats that you can't use for crafting or anything like that because you just can't store them all. I mean, I had multiple complete stacks of this stuff before I ever had a crafter able to actually use it.
I would send all my complete stacks to Sans. Because when we were running Mordor, she was the one opening all of those chests and filling up my bags. So every time I got a complete stack, they went to her.
Yeah, I mean, it was nuts. And I did not even have that. I didn't run with Sans I did most of the time, but she was on a Squishy Moonkeeper, so she wasn't nearly as active with opening things as she is on her Hunter, because she's not that confident she's not going to get killed. So I did not have as big of an issue as you did, Terry, but oh my goodness, I had way more than I could have dreamed of needing. I still have stacks of stuff, even though I've crafted through the entire Doomfold tier. That's just sitting untouched.
Yeah.
I don't do crafting, as people have heard. So, I was sending... She'd open it up and fill up my bags, and we would joke about that too. Like, how long until Terry's bags get full? Oh, about 30 seconds. Because chest. Yep, my bags are full. Here's
and
Sans.
maniacal giggling on Sans' end, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
Anything else to say about loot boxes?
No.
I am
Good.
excited to see how it works when it rolls out, though.
We will see. They'll probably have one or two things to tweak before it happens. Now, they did say that the system is not... that there's still some details that have to be done. They'll probably only roll out at the upper levels during the initial release, but in the end, it's supposed to go all the way through. The low-level loot boxes will scale based on your level when you open it up. And that means when they have it fully implemented, all loot boxes will be this way, and that there'll be a lower level key. Now, one of the things that they noted is that sturdy steel keys are going to be deprecated and no longer awarded once this goes live.
What is it? The year 3 loot box that's got keys in it?
They
Or
said,
year 3 anniversary box.
obviously, they're going to have to replace that with something. Maybe they'll replace it with some of those motes or whatever they're calling those things. The lower level stuff, obviously, probably more likely the cosmetic stuff, because who knows what they're going to replace, but they're probably going to replace it with something for the year 3 boxes. But right now, sturdy steel keys are going to be going away. So that's the biggest warning in the entire thing, and some people are wondering, okay, this means should I hoard the keys or should I dump the keys? So right now there's already speculation on that. Let's head into our new player question. Centers, what's your question this week?
So my question this week is actually related to pop-ups in the game. And I've noticed when I'm playing in the game, sometimes, but most especially on my melee characters, a window pops up on the screen with some skills showing. And I was wondering what the purpose of the pop-up is and if it's something I need to pay attention to.
That answer will, of course, depend on the class, because there are certain classes that do get pop-ups and certain ones that don't. For example, let's say the captain. If you've got a captain, then you'll get a pop-up whenever you defeat an opponent. And that is because there are a couple of skills of the captains that are based on defeating an opponent. One of them is you have this heal that heals the fellowship, and another one is an area attack that goes against the monsters in the area. Now, this particular skill, after they did the class changes back in Helm's Deep, is now always available. Originally, it was only available on defeat, but now a weaker form is available always, but it's stronger when you defeat an opponent. So therefore, you have the pop-up to say the stronger version is active right now, which usually means if you want to use it, this might be the best time to use it. You only use it outside of the defeat response when it's a real emergency. But when it pops up, then I always try to use it whenever it pops up on the defeat skill, if there's any use for it whatsoever at that time point.
And then in other cases, like for the Warden, it's a response skill, right?
For the Warden, it is a variation of the Javelin skills. The Warden has several clicky skills, non-gamut skills, that are based on the Javelin, where you toss the Javelin, you're throwing the Javelin, all sorts of situations like that. But every once in a while, I don't know what triggers it, but occasionally what happens is you will trigger a free toss to it that doesn't count against your cooldown. It can be used despite there being a cooldown on it currently, and therefore you'll get a pop-up saying that you have this special version of it is now available. And that's only in the yellow line where that's happened. I've never seen a pop-up on a Warden outside of being in yellow line.
It's probably a response to something, because usually, aside from the Captain one where it's on enemy defeat, in most other cases, it's a response skill. So like the Guardian has skills that will pop up when you've blocked an enemy's attack or when you've parried an enemy's attack, because you have certain skills that are only available once you've done that. And then the Champion has two actually. In Yellow Line, there is the Born for Combat, which is the capstone trait on the side. So it's your set bonus trait. And you get that pop-up after you've been hit 10 times by enemies. And then it basically is a 360 AoE that does damage to everything in the area. The other one is in Blue Line, which is Riposte, because it comes up after you've parried an attack. And yes, it does come up in the little window. I just moved the window off to the side because I also have Riposte up on my bar.
Okay.
I did the same thing with the Guardian skills. I actually moved that off to the side because it was distracting.
Yeah, I have a area where I like to have them pop up.
So usually they pop up on the top left of my screen because I haven't moved it from the default location. And I always notice it after I'm done with whatever it was I was fighting. And then I'm like, oh, I wonder what that is.
I could have clicked on that. So if you're prone to clicking skills, you want to move it somewhere to where it's easier for you to click.
Yeah. And these are referred to as snapshot skills is essentially what they call them.
Okay.
Yeah, so therefore, on the Warden side, they're called snapshot skills. The extra ones that you can get, because you just toss it off without going and get your usual stuff. Now, I should note that there are some classes that if they're ridiculously common and the player is probably going to be paying attention to the section anyway, they don't get pop-ups. Burglars, for example, their crit pop-ups, they don't get pop-ups for their crit reaction skills because, well, first of all, burglars have a long history of having crit response skills anyway. Mm-hmm. And besides, they're almost, how often you get a crit response is, because I've been playing the burglar a little bit more recently than in the past, and there are times where I go through combats where that crit response skills are active more often than they're not.
Especially once you hit the middle levels and you've got enough traits into the crit things.
Yeah.
That's the trick, is you've got to have the trait points to put into the different categories that up your chances for crits. That's why Redline becomes super deadly at about level 50.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
All right, did we answer your question then?
I think so. It definitely helped to know what that was and why it's there, as opposed to going, I have this random pop-up that I can't get rid of.
Yeah.
So
Loremaster's got one too, actually. It's attached to a pet thing. I forget which one it is. It lowers your cooldowns on a couple of skills, and it'll pop up in that window.
Oh, I've never noticed it on my lore masters. I think it's because I'm usually too busy watching all of the pretty graphics.
Now, concerning Snapshot in general on the Warden side, the bonus is for earning 35 ranks in the yellow line tree. And it says Gambit builders have a chance of triggering the ability to use one of your Javelin skills, even if it's on cooldown. You cannot gain this effect more than once every 20 seconds.
Oh, okay. That's
So,
still a little OP.
Yeah, it does take 35. You need 35 trait points in it, but yeah, it can be a bit much sometimes. Now let's head into our week in LOTRO. And Terry Adwin, what were you up to?
So last week we talked about the Moors, and Pineleaf had never been to Creepside Osgiliath. Well, he'd never really been to the Moors version of Osgiliath. So after last week's show, Cinders and Sans and I talked him into taking his creep into Osgiliath. And so
I'm going to interrupt real quickly. Sanswinda and I had no idea he even had creeps. We were shocked.
I actually had seen a couple episodes of Fellowship of the Creeps, and plus I also kind of came into LOTRO Players via LOTRO Players Adventures, which came out of Fellowship of the Creeps, because it started with the Fellowship of the Creeps cast, right? Wasn't that how Adventures got started? Was you guys were done creeping and did
something
other stuff?
Like that.
Something like that. Anyway, because it was all the same voices. It was Pineleaf and Andang and Drac and Nethelros, and then Sithrith, and then I guested on the show, and yeah. So anyway, so I knew that Pineleaf had a fairly high ranked spider, Pine Venom. And so we escorted Pine Venom through Creepside Osgiliath. We did this nice little tour, and nothing happened. It was kind of awesome because Sans and Cinders were also on spiders, and talk about irony, Sanswinda on a spider. But and I was on my warg, which is just baby rank 0 warg, and I was in stealth and I was running ahead of the group because I was doing the scouting thing. I didn't actually have tracks, so I couldn't really do official type scouting, but I was running ahead just to see if anything was getting killed anywhere, because that's generally the sign that people are out there. There was nobody. It was completely dead. The only creeps or freeps or whatever on that landscape was the 4 of us. So we went through and we kind of happily paraded through Osgiliath, and we're like, nah, 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 nah. And we actually took out a couple of NPCs over by the Eastern Docks, which was fun. And then after Pineleaf had to go, Sans and Cinders switched over to their works, and more nothing happened because basically the Moors was totally dead. We saw maybe 2 things in the OOC chat for like the entire time we were out there, but my baby rank 0 warg needed to get her good map to Grams, so we padded around and scouted the locations I needed to scout, and then there was an auto flip of the one keep that I actually had to go into and talk to somebody. So we went up there and talked to the NPC. So my baby warg has attained rank 1. I'm now a ranked creep, yay, on Landreval. Because my rank 7 works over on Arkenstone. And yeah, it was fun. I forgot how much I loved warging. I honestly loved being a warg. I loved being invisible in the Moors. So I was, as we were going, I was talking them through tips on how to successfully warg in the Moors. Because what Aerother taught me when I was learning how to warg in the Moors is that you never want to be a visible warg. And if you get into combat, you've failed as a warg, basically. Because until you get your disappear, you don't want to get into combat. You want to be able to tag and run and not do like long combats. So, yeah. And then the next day, I led, which is in quotation marks, led, because it was Girls of Middle-earth. I led Girls of Middle-earth, and that goes about as well as herding cats. Actually, I think it would be easier to herd cats than it is to lead the girls of Middle-earth because they were everywhere. We get in a group, and then the dots just start to spread. But we went through the epic part of Volume 1, Book 2, that took us hunting undead and some more undead, and then we did a detour to slaughter trolls on the way up from Harlow, which was, I swear, 6 burglars. It's like the death of 6 hobbit burglars. It's the death of 1,000 paper cuts. Because we're basically stabbing the trolls in the knees. And they're just kind of keeling over dead after 2 or 3 hits. Because it's hobbit burglars. It's fantastic. So much stabbing. And then Spare Bear, the Bjorning, went skirmishing, not terribly responsibly, with Pineleaf and Sands. And I say not terribly responsibly because I did the skirmish tutorial and then forgot to actually trait a skirmish soldier. Because I got the archer, but I forgot to actually talk to the captain and trade it. So we get into the skirmish and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to summon this warrior because all I have is the warrior. I'm just not going to summon it. I'll be fine. And I was. So we proved that we were still the 3 most OP classes in the game, the OP Furball and the Minstrel and Sans' Hunter. I swear that Minstrel is the most overpowered thing in the history of ever. It's hilarious because we go in and a pack of mobs, and I go in first because, melee bear. I go in first, and I get everybody's attention, and then Pineleaf uses 1 heal, and it's a little heal, and everything goes after Pineleaf.
Yeah.
Like 5 goblins peel off of me and go toward the dwarf. It's like, what the heck? But, I'm only like a level 20-ish furball. I don't have any kind of taunt, so I can't get him back. So I just have to finish swiping at the thing until it's dead, and then I can go pick out the goblins that are still picking out Pineleaf. But
Right.
most of them are dead between Pineleaf and Sands. So, yeah. So, Cinders, how was your week?
My week was rather interesting. So, aside from doing all of the things that Terry mentioned that I did with them, I got adventurous and I took my champion cook out for some skirmishing, trying to get her up to a high enough level to go get Dunland rep without having to quest the 10 because her all of her storage space is maxed out. And so I ran the attack at dawn in blue line without realizing I was in blue line and discovered that was not very effective. It was just very long and tedious. So then for the next skirmish that I ran, I tried red line and it was so much better. And Sans laughed at me when she found out what I'd done. She thought that was just hysterical. Then I took one of my lore masters into the North Downs with the field trip and discovered that it was not her very first trip to the North Downs like I had thought. She did some wild and woolly questing with Sanswinda and a few others. And I got to do the Inn of the Forsaken for what I believe is the first time. And then last...
You have my sympathies.
It was actually quite fascinating, and we only died in the boss fight one time where we wiped. And
like I said, you have my sympathy.
We discovered that wardens don't count for medium armor, and captains do, neither of which we had with us. So we had a lore master, a warden, and I believe a champion. Right, Pineleaf?
Right.
And so we got through that, and I got to have the very fun water slide trip that I had not experienced before, accompanied by the, what happened? And then my high elf Pine Sniff is very, very close to level 20 and getting her report. And today she discovered that maggot has an obsolete meaning, which I actually don't remember, but Pineleaf looked it up, and it was fascinating. So, obviously not fascinating enough to really stick in my mind, but I may also have gotten distracted in the middle of it, so.
Well, there is that. And the whole thing with maggot came up because we were thinking about Farmer Maggot and all that stuff and wondering why Tolkien chose Maggot for his name.
We were running past Storolo Maggot, and I said, if Hobbit last names always have a meaning that relates to their character, what do you suppose Maggot means? And that started the whole thing off.
So there is absolutely nothing whimsical about Farmer Maggot, so therefore it certainly can't be that meaning of it. I would think, though, that the grub meaning, because we do have a Hobbit name that's also Grub. And Maggot, and the original meaning of Maggot is probably closer to grub than it is to the modern definition anyway.
Well, and, grub can also mean food, so maybe they just really like food and didn't want to have the last name Food.
Well, I don't think it was possible grub had that meaning also. I don't think Maggot ever had that meaning. At least I hope not.
Right. I think that modern usage of grub to mean food is more a little too modern for Tolkien anyway.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
So as for what I did, as Cinders was saying, Xerox and I introduced her to the Inn of the Forsaken.
Again, you have my sympathies.
Yeah. And we thought that she had to see it, and we knew that it was unlikely that Sans would join us. So we just chose a week where Sans wasn't there, and we had three. So three of us went in together. And this was my first time being the person who was supposed to be trying to lead this, because normally I was with someone else who was more knowledgeable of the instance, which helps a lot to it. So therefore, there are a couple of details I still had not quite down yet. So it's trying to figure out, all right, when is it that you need to be near the one where you go, where you bring up the spikes, and where's the one where you have the swirlies at the end, and bring all those details to the boss fight. I think I figured it out closely to the end, but we didn't quite have a makeup to make it easy to get the boss to be where he needed to be, because the boss kept on stopping away from where the holes in the ship were, so therefore it was hard to get the spikes activated on him. But eventually we did win the fight. Thank goodness.
The bear did get spiked a lot, though. For whatever the reason, we always ended up perfectly for the bear to be over the spikes and not the boss.
Not the boss. So, yes, it was and without a burglar or without a burglar captain or the
hunter
or the hunter in the party, we of course had to get through all the traps the hard way.
And that's rough.
Yeah, it was rough, all right. And what was very interesting is we had Xerox, who was completely not confident concerning the riddles in there, and I was a little bit more confident than Xerox is, but I believe Cinders and Xerox solved them all. Which I thought was a little strange. They're the ones who wound up solving all the riddles.
I was going to say, I promise I did not use the wiki, but I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little thing. Okay, so which is the answer to this one? And then on my burglar on Crick Hollow, I headed into the Redhorn Lows. I'm doing the epic storyline in there, so I did the part where you're supposed to scout the location down in the second hall and then go back to the Redhorn Lows to get all that gunpowder and all that stuff. And I did the second round quest also in the Redhorn Loons at the same time, where you're supposed to break those sluice boxes, take care of all the ore and stuff like that in there. So I took care of all those quests. I finished up standing right next to the person who sent you out after the spiders. And I'm going to do the spider quest in there, and that should get me up so I could complete the deed there, because I want the trait that's associated with that deed. I think it's innocence. It might be that's in there. So, whatever it was one that I decided that a trait that I wanted. So therefore, I went on and am going to do a few more quests from there. And once I finish with that, then head back to the 21st Hall to continue with the epic storyline. Then on my Lore Master, I finished scouting the Dunland for the Falcon clan, and they rewarded me with a free trip to Isengard. How about that?
Awesome!
Yeah, awesome! Isn't the Brennan just so good?
The most sought after vacation location in that area.
Right?
Oh, yes.
Everybody wants to go to Isengard.
Yeah, yes, everyone wants a trip to Isengard, especially being into the dungeons there with their nice, beautiful sight. You can see industry at its best. Then in News Beyond Lotro, we have another song by the Antipodean writer, I See Fire Variation. Now, interesting here that the Antipodean writer has finally learned what the word parody means. And now that finally gives me an understanding of why he was referring to his previous one, because I was looking at his last article, and it says, how in the world could he call that a parody? Now, setting a new lyrics to an existing tune is something that is probably as old as music.
At least as old as Weird Al Yankovic.
Well, no, Weird Al Yankovic is actually literally parody. In his case, it is literally parody. For Weird Al's case, at least. But, for example, the Star Spangled Banner was written and he wrote the poem, and then it was set to a particular piece of music that already existed, for example. Now, of course, today, everyone knows the tune is the Star Spangled Banner because no one remembers the original song that went to.
Oh, you can actually still find it, though.
Yeah, you can still find it. I found it once.
So, it actually showed up in my music curriculum for school, like this last week.
The Elysium.
Yeah, it showed up as...
Tuned?
Yeah, because they were explaining to the kids that you don't have to you don't have to be good at writing music to be a part of the music scene.
Ah, yes, I could see why it would come up in there.
And so they brought up that he had written the lyrics with that tune in mind, and so they fit. And now we just know the two together.
Actually, he did not consciously have it in mind. He knew the tune because he had in the past written some poems intentionally to that tune, but when he wrote the Star Spangled Banner, he wasn't consciously thinking of it. It was just that his father-in-law said it will go well with that, and said, "Oh yeah, you're right." And so that's why it was used with that. But it wasn't consciously, but it could be that subconsciously he was thinking of the tune then.
Okay.
Because he was familiar with it.
And say in the little book that goes with the curriculum,
they always, yeah.
They said that it was very conscious on his part. So I did not research that myself.
All right, so we'll have to see which source is correct in that matter. But yeah, it is very common back then. And of course, one of our national songs, America, for example, is done to the tune of God Save the Queen.
Of course.
Which is another example of that. And of course, it's repurposed because in this country, we would have very little reason to sing God Save the King or God Save the Queen.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So, of course, we come up with, but I presume that the people knew the tune well enough that, okay, we had to come up with something to sing with it. A lot of children's songs take existing tunes, for example, and do that stuff to it. So it's it's a practice that goes, well, I think half the music from the Renaissance probably did that anyway. Half the songs from there, I'm pretty sure. And in fact, if you read The Lord of the Rings, for example, there are a couple of cases of songs that are in The Lord of the Rings where Tolkien said this is sung to a very old tune or something like that, such as the Trolls song, for example, was mentioned that, and in fact, that's the reason for the way the scheme is because Tolkien was writing it with this tune in mind. Yeah, so it is a very old practice on that. And when it is something that is done to be a tune that's not satirical in nature, then it's not called a parody. But apparently, I get the impression from the article, I know back to the article we're actually talking about.
Yeah, this tangent has been brought to you by Pinopedia.
Yeah.
Just in case anybody was wondering.
Yeah, there is that. Is that he was talking about that they used the word parody apparently on the hashtag where they refer to them as parodies on there when they write something with another tune in mind. Well, technically it's only a parody if there is a satirical nature, either satirizing sometimes the target of the music, sometimes satirizing something completely. Political satirists, for example, there are some political satirists who do have a musical bit to it, and so they take an existing tune and they write a political satire using that tune. And that's something. And of course, as you were talking about, Weird Al is very well known for his parodies in there, and where you're making fun of something. So I'd say it was probably the parody I remember hearing the most was, because I think it was one of the most successful I heard of, was Another One Rides the Bus. Right, which was, of course, taken using the tune of Another One Bites the Dust.
You know, that I have not heard that one of his.
I think that might have been Dr. Demento instead. It's possible it could have been Dr. Demento instead. But anyway, one of those is satirical, right? But anyway, there's a satirical nature on it, and that's what's technically a parody. And I think the reason why they're using the word parody loosely in this community is because parody is protected material. Parody is, when something is a parody, it is generally free from copyright claims, because in order to parody effectively, you have to be copying something somewhere. So therefore, copyright laws allow for parody. When people talk about fair use, parody is one of those things that falls under that fair use clause in there. And I have a feeling it is that they like to call them parodies because because they're hoping that will help to protect them from any copyright claims on the matter. And usually the music industry, apparently I'm given the impression that they're not going to go after someone and just say, okay, yeah, it's parody, even if it's not, because if they're not making any money out of it. But if someone makes a lot of money out of it, it better be a real parody or they're going to get sued. Anyway, another tangent from Pinopedia. But anyway, so that's why he was talking about. So he decided to call it a variation instead. For that, and that's the entire thing on it. I see fire in there, and I think I just spent half an hour on that. But anyway, this is based on I see something, a theme from The Hobbit.
Yeah, it's an Ed Sheeran song from The Hobbit. It's actually talking more or less about the same subject, just from a different point of view.
Yeah. So therefore, that's in there, and talking about in one of the important things in there, trying to decide what are you going to do in writing when you're trying to think that you're writing something in it. Is what do you have that's similar and what's different and stuff like that? Because obviously, it's not going to be some hooks into the original at the same time that you're doing it. But anyway, that is that. Now, did you actually want me to read this?
No.
Okay. I think we discussed it enough, yeah.
Because it's a music video, and we're not going to make you sing.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, there is a music video attached to this. So that's something to look at it. Now, let's see. We currently have 21 supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to join this illustrious rate of players and help support LOTRO players, simply go to the donations page where you can support the Players Alliance on Patreon. There you'll find rewards, including a mention on the podcast, your choice, or be a guest with us for an episode of LOTRO Players News. We did not receive any emails this week, but if you'd like to send us one, you can send it to the podcast at LOTROplayers.com. And you could also follow us on Twitter, the Players Alliance at Players Ally, LOTRO Players at LOTRO Players, Arendis at Arendis, Pineleaf at Pineleaf Needles, Senswinda at Senswinda, and Terry Edwin at Terry Edwin. And also you can follow the senders at Emeralina. The Players Alliance has 2 shows every Monday at 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. We have DDO Players News, and every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, we have LOTRO Players News. And you can join us for our shows at LOTROplayers.com/live. And that is all for tonight. And this is Pineleaf Needles reminding you to skirmish responsibly.